All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Wes Bush. I am the founder and host of the Product Led Summit. And here I am so happy to have Adam, who is the CEO of BetterProposals. Now, Adam, for those of you or people listening that don't know you, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself so people can learn more about you and BetterProposals?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thanks for having me on. Secondly, my name's Adam Hempinstall, founder and CEO or co-founder and CEO of Better Proposals. The purpose of our tool is to help agencies, service businesses, anybody that sends quotes or proposals to their clients in order to get a deal signed. Better Proposals helps you do that in a more efficient way and generally makes you look better to your clients. That's pretty much the summary of what we're doing.
Awesome. And so one of the big reasons why I had Adam come here is because he has taken a very different approach to product roadmaps. He actually recommends ditching the traditional way of building a product roadmap. So as soon as I heard him talking about this, and he seemed really, really passionate about this topic, I was just like, I have to have Adam on the Product Led Summit. And so, Adam, I'd love to just hear from you, like, why do you believe so adamantly that people should ditch the traditional product roadmap?
Cool. So first of all, let's define what the traditional product roadmap actually looks like. So if you're a massive corporation, you generally get your ideas from those people because that's where most of us kind of look up to. You look up to the bigger companies and what have you. So what they have is they have these great big long roadmaps, upwards of sometimes years. And these are all the features that they're going to work on and build over a period of time. The problem is when stuff comes up that they haven't committed to, there's no way of interjecting into the middle of that roadmap. So the longer your roadmap is, the more inflexible you are as a company. And as a SaaS company, you have to be flexible. It's pretty much your one main advantage over your bigger, more corporate competitors is exactly that. So being flexible is important, and it's important to us at least. So we just went down the road of saying we are not going to commit to anything that's literally longer than 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. We don't commit to anything. We have no idea what we're going to be doing in April. Literally no idea. So that's pretty much the way that we've run things. And oddly enough, we did this kind of anyway. And then when I've read quite a few of Basecamp's books, they've actually got a structure in place for this. And they literally specify they do it in 6-week cycles. So when I read their structured version of my kind of esoteric version, we just decided to sort of adopt that. But it came from within, and then we sort of saw their version. But I fully recommend just ditching the concept of the roadmaps altogether. But yeah, the whole concept of even having a roadmap, I think, is strange. But what actually makes it worse is public roadmaps.
Okay.
Now, this is a new level of crazy. So when you have a public roadmap, you are held to it in every regard, right? So people will constantly pressure you and like, when's this thing coming? When's that thing coming? You said it'd be coming this week and it's not here. And you're like, well, it's like only 11 o'clock on Monday. Give us a chance. I haven't even had my coffee yet. So like, it just creates an unnecessary pressure. And I think when you're working in a SaaS business, especially in the product side of things, you don't actually want pressure. You want to be free. You want to be relaxed. You want to be calm. And you want to be in an environment to do your best work. And having to get a feature out late on a Sunday night because you promised it for Monday morning is not the kind of environment that conduces people to be working on their best stuff. So that's kind of an overview as to why I think it's a bad idea.
Okay, and so how do you currently take customer feedback into account whenever it comes to those cycles with 6 to 8 weeks for your roadmap?
So basically, it's going to sound really bad, but we basically ignore most customer requests. When I say ignore them, I mean we don't specifically do anything with them. So we don't write them down. We don't make a note of them. We don't have a tally sheet and mark down who's requested this thing the most or whatever. Because our roadmap, if you want to call it that, just to be simple, isn't any longer than 6 to 8 weeks, it doesn't really matter. We just work on, or when we're deciding what we're going to work on for the next 6 to 8 weeks, you know what you should work on because you've just heard it that many times. So you don't
Yeah.
need to write it down and create a list because it's obvious. So like, I think here's an example. So we used to get loads of people that would message us and say, my customer can't sign their proposal. We're like, oh, we know why. It's because you haven't ticked eligible to sign when you've sent it to them, right? It's ticked by default, but for some reason people used to untick it. Don't know why.
Okay.
Um, Now, we used to hear this literally 3 times a week. So it didn't, when we sat down on like, okay, we need to decide what we're going to do next, it wasn't even a discussion. It was like, well, first of all, we've got to make that eligible to sign thing better.
Right.
That doesn't even require a discussion because we hear it all the time. And then once that thing's fixed, something else jumps to the top of the priority list. So they're the things that we do listen to, but we just listen in a different way, if that makes sense.
Okay. And so for your specific process, it sounds like you would almost, if you were to take this same process and go to another company, would you agree that you would almost have to be somewhat in customer support to hear a lot of those same problems over and over again? Or could this only be applied to smaller SaaS businesses?
It's a really good question, actually. I suppose I haven't really thought about how you would apply it to a bigger firm. I mean, I don't do customer support on a day-to-day basis anymore, but my co-founder Sabrina still does. She manages the people that work in the customer support team. So that's a great point. I suppose if there's no feedback loop, then you don't necessarily know. But I think when you involve I suppose the evolution of this would be to sit down with the people that are in your customer support team and say, what's important to you? What questions are you answering a lot? What should we build next? And instead of having this come from your customers and then kind of writing it down, it's like, it's more of a gut feeling. Do you know what I mean? Rather than it sort of
Yeah.
being very linear and writing it down, it's just that gut feeling of like, what's coming up a lot? And then you kind of address those concerns. And I think the tendency is to write everything down and create a list and then work from that list. But it's sort of like the things that have been around the longest should be fixed, but they're always going to be the ones with the highest number of ticks because they've just simply been a thing longer. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? So I hope that kind of makes sense.
Okay. And so I guess to further that point too, whenever it comes to your process for building a product roadmap, if that's what you want to call it, that's the label. Like, how has this shaped the way you've grown Better Proposals?
So we kind of divide things into 2 sections. So we've got the vision, and that's the stuff that we don't let our customers dictate because they can't see the whole picture. They can only see their specific situation. So what you'll often find is somebody comes through and they're like, right, you guys need to build this feature and you need to do it this way and whatever, because I've got this one situation where this happens. And I think for a young SaaS business that's, maybe hasn't had years of experience dealing with requests like that, the tendency is to go, oh, right, we need to go and build that thing for that person. And the problem with that is that if you extrapolate that same mindset out over even just a year, you have just destroyed your product. You've destroyed it
Sure.
because you've now allowed all these random little strands um, of like people pulling you in these different directions. And
Yeah.
now the core of your product doesn't really do anything. It's kind of strange. And, we've been very reluctant to sort of go down that route. So we find that requests and feedback comes in 2 forms. So one is trying to dictate the vision of Better Proposals or the industry or whatever. And the other is things like, guys, you've got a really confusing word in this scenario. That I listen to. Because I don't use the application on a daily basis for what it's intended to be used for, obviously.
Right.
So I can't objectively give feedback on that anymore. I'm too distant from it. And that's not to say I don't care about the product or I'm not involved in it. I very much am. But I'm not experiencing it in the same context that the people that use it on a daily basis are. Does that make sense? So
Definitely.
so somebody's like, oh, this is strange. You've got, the word back here, but actually that isn't really back. It's more change. And you're like, oh, okay, interesting. So that kind of stuff, very open to listening to, because that's the kind of stuff that makes your product better. It's that tiny little changes. It's changing your microcopy, changing your descriptions, changing labels for things, maybe a flow, that kind of stuff. But when somebody comes through and they're like, oh, you guys should, translate it to Italian because the Italian market's massive. You're like,
Right.
dude, no, it's not going to happen. So like, leave the vision to me, but you tell me what the button should be called. It's a simplistic way of putting it, but
yeah. And so as you get more and more out of the business in terms of the day-to-day, getting out of the customer support and really transitioning yourself to be that CEO of the business, how do you see your process changing right now? Because it sounded like initially when you were talking about it, it was really fueled by you had just heard these same requests over and over again, so that by the time it got to the end of that one sprint, you already had that idea. You knew what you wanted to do for that next sprint. So as you get further out of it, like how do you plan on either maintaining or changing this process as you evolve as a leader in the organization?
That's a really good question. I suppose the true answer is I don't know, because I don't feel like I'm fully there yet. So I can have a guess though, because I'm starting to see a little bit of a change. So the first thing to note is that I'm not seeing those customer requests all the time myself. So what I need to do, and we do this, but it's interesting to sort of explain it out, is making sure that the other people that are receiving these requests have the same power that I felt that I gave myself. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I gave myself that power to decide what feature was going to be next. And of course we have discussions and things, but generally speaking, if I said, right, we're going to build this, it would happen. No one's going, I don't know. um, so yeah, so I think it really comes down to giving power to the right people. And we need to make sure that we are empowering the people that are on customer support to be able to feel confident enough to come to me and go, Adam, listen, I'm sick to death of answering this question. Every single day, someone asks about blah, and I feel like sometimes, especially with roles like customer service and customer support, customer success, however we want to call it, there isn't necessarily that credence that's given to that role. Now it is sort of, becoming a very important role. And I think a lot of SaaS companies do recognize this. But if you think about it in terms of customer service and, the customer service that you get at a supermarket or, when you call up your phone company or whatever, full well they don't have any power whatsoever. Whereas in our company, they do have that power, and they can make suggestions to us. And I'm the idiot if I don't listen. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I think it's just a case of almost flipping the script, giving them power, and then letting them dictate to you what should be built.
I really like that. And especially having been calling other people at customer support companies, those ones that always broadcast, well, customer support's our number one core value. And it's the worst process ever. So I love how you're flipping the script and actually giving those customer support reps the ability to impact change on the business. And so that is really great. And so I'm curious, how do you currently handle your feature requests? Because before you were just mentioning about how if you did listen to everyone, it would just pull your product in all these different places until you wind up in Narnia and you wanted to go to Boston. It's just like, how do you handle that right now?
So we generally take a no first approach, and it sounds negative, but we don't frame it like that. But we generally try to be really honest with people. So generally things fit into one of three buckets. So the first bucket is, I don't want to say it without it being like almost an insult, but it's a stupid idea. We're never going to do it. And just no. It's just not ever going to happen. And, I feel confident saying that's not something we're ever going to build. So does Sabrina. And part of the process that we're going through is to try and train our customer support guys and girls to have that same level of confidence to say, yeah, listen, that's not something we're ever going to do. So
Right.
I think standing your ground and saying like what you're happy to do, what you're not happy to do, I think that is really, really, really important. And taking a stand is vital. You know, you can't be anything if you're not prepared to stand up for something.
Definitely.
You know, so I think it's a really important exercise to decide and be able to just say, actually, that's not something we're going to do. So that's the first thing. The second is the kind of maybe stuff. So these are things like, I'm trying to think of an example, like it's a feature request that really you could add, you know, if you had unlimited resources and it wasn't going to impact anything negatively, you'd totally throw it in. So that's the stuff that's kind of maybe, and this is where people I think get things a little bit wrong, is they try and say yes to that stuff. And I think that's where people go wrong. So we're going to pause on that one for a second, and I'll just finish up the obvious one. So if somebody comes through and says, are you going to improve your HubSpot integration anytime soon? And we already are in the process of doing that. We're like, yep, we absolutely are. This is what we're doing about it. It's not finished yet. And you'll get an email when it's done. No promise of timelines, because we never know. Even if it's the day before launch, you never know. So we never promise timelines. But we will tell them if we're working on it or if it's currently in our 6-week window.
Okay.
So that's the easy one. Coming back to the maybes, they're the ones that I feel you could make yeses with. You could easily make them yeses and say, yeah, you know, we'll probably do that at some point. And I think they're the ones that you do have the ability to say, listen, cool idea. Maybe. Like it's one of those things you just got to kind of, it's a season to taste thing, because like your personality might dictate that you might do it in one way or another way. But I think it's important to like draw that distinction between which ones are definite yeses, which ones are definite nos. And then with the maybes, you just be honest with them and just say, maybe, you know, don't give them any indication either way, and try not to commit to something that might not happen. So I think just being honest there is really kind of important. But when I started thinking about dividing it up into those 3 categories, that kind of made it easier, because when something came through, I'd be like, oh, that's a definite no, that's a definite yes, and yeah, we could do this one. And that's where you do your maybe thing.
Okay, and so it sounds like you kind of do have that process already, where it's like the no's, the maybes, and the definite yeses. So on that note, like, do you have a roadmap where you maybe keep track of some of those things, or at least those different buckets? And if so, why not?
No, we don't. We don't write down anything that somebody comes in and says, because if it's important, it will come up enough and you'll deal with it. You don't need to write down. You know, if I don't know, we've got something that's completely illogical, completely stupid. Fortunately, we kind of don't have those major things anymore, but yeah, they've all kind of weeded out over the years. But if there is something that's just absolutely stupid, you can't go 5 minutes without hearing about it. And the more customers you have, the more you know about it. So that for us, you know, I think what it really comes down to is it's having experience. And as a young SaaS company, you don't have this, and it's very, very difficult. But yeah, I mean, you want to feel like you're listening to your customers, you care about them, and you're writing down all their ideas. And for a little while, we did. And at one point, we looked through that list, and I'm like, we're never going to build any of this, literally any of it. Like, I could cross all of this off the list right now. And that was when we realized how, at the time, we felt like each and every one of those things had merit. And then with even just 6, 7, 8 weeks distance from it, you're immediately like, oh, actually, that's not really that good of a feature, or it's not good of an idea. And it's just letting those ideas settle and then having the confidence to kind of say no. So that's why we don't write anything down. Obviously, at some stage when we sit down and we commit to our 6-week, you use that good word, sprint, and you have that sort of 6 to 8 week period where you're going to blitz something. You know, that's when we write stuff down, we commit to it, we document it and whatever. But other than that, nothing gets written down.
Okay, that's fascinating. And so with this whole approach of not taking the traditional product roadmap, like what are some of the tangible benefits that you've had as a company?
Good question. Pressure, lack of pressure. You don't feel that, oh, we've got to get this done, we've got to get this done, we've got to get this done. You don't feel that. And I think there is, I don't subscribe to the hustle thing, and we try to have kind of almost an anti-hustle approach to things.
Okay.
But it does have its merits in some cases, and working hard is important. It's how you achieve stuff. But I think when it comes to the quality of your work, I don't think that's something that should be mucked with. If it's sales, cool, hustle. If it's, I don't know, maybe marketing stuff, cool, hustle your way through. But product stuff, no. That requires deep thought. It requires time. It requires thinking. It requires good sleep, playing in the park, playing sport. None of these things have anything to do with coding or design or drawing shapes. But what they do is they get your brain to go back to a place where you can consider something and think, is that right? Is that the right way to do it? We all know that your best ideas come from playing, sport, or you're in the shower or whatever. You never have your best ideas sitting in front of a computer. And it's the same with, development and design and coding. You always have your best ideas when you're doing the complete opposite task. So we kind of encourage anybody that's sort of working in that environment to only be in that environment when they're actually working and they know what they're doing. The rest of the time, take it off, chill, get your head around it. And when it makes sense, come back and do it. And, we've been in plenty of situations. There was a feature recently, I'm struggling to remember what it was, that we'd spent probably 9 months thinking how it was going to work. Okay. And we could not get our head around it. It was sort of like we were nearly there, but couldn't quite do it. And then we just sat down and just went, done, because it had time. It took us 9 months, but it had that time to do it. I think if we'd blitzed that and we'd smashed it out back when we originally came up with the idea to do it, it would have been awful because our understanding of that problem wasn't there.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I guess in your opinion, like, could you even apply this same approach if you were a venture-backed SaaS company that's got really tight deadlines and needs to grow at all costs?
Probably not. Probably not. Maybe. It depends who's running the company, I think. And it depends what kind of venture capitalist you have. This is
definitely,
this is not my bag, by the way, but I don't understand that world particularly well. We're bootstrapped, always will be. We'll never take outside funding. But I think you probably could. If you had the right backers and you had the right leaders, I think you probably could do it. But I just think the internal or like the natural pressure of being a venture-backed company doesn't really allow for taking 9 months to build a simple feature. If the market's demanding it, you better build it, and you better just drink enough coffee to get your head around it. There's no time to spend, several months thinking about how you're going to build something really simple. But yeah, I don't know. I think it would have to be the right set of circumstances, I think.
Okay. Well, Adam, this has been incredible, just hearing your very different approach to building product roadmaps. And I like the really taking the time approach to just sitting through, thinking through these problems, and really using the customer as, although you start with the default, no, we're not doing that. And then it's just like allowing it to kind of boil like a soup, weird abstract analogy, until it gets to a point where like, that's ready. We can make that work for you. And coming back to them, and if it keeps boiling up, make it happen. And so this is fascinating. And so for everyone else who's listening, like, what is the best way to learn more about you, get in touch, and Better Proposals as well?
Sure. So basically I'm quite reachable, I think. I like to think I am anyway. But yeah, I don't use sort of Twitter and things like that. But if you want to check out Better Proposals, you can just go to betterproposals.com. venturebacked.io. There's tons of stuff there. We've written all sorts of books and got guides on different things and what have you. So if you're in the sales game, there's definitely an awful lot that you can learn there. Yeah, I mean, other than that, if you we use Intercom, so just chuck a message through, direct it to me, and it'll find its way to me, and I will reply.
Perfect. So thanks so much for coming on,
Pleasure.
Adam, and thanks everyone else for listening. Have a great day.